Minister, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about an issue that relates to your time in public safety, a different portfolio, and it's currently one before the foreign interference inquiry, namely that a warrant application targeting Michael Chan, a well-known Liberal political operative, sat with your office for 6 weeks in 2021 before you signed off on it. Can you say for the record when you first saw that warrant?
Yeah, I've already said for the record, I've actually testified on this matter under oath before the Commission on 4 different occasions. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that warrant was first brought to my attention on May the 11th, 2021. I was briefed by the Director of CSIS and his staff, and then I read the document. It was a very lengthy application, and I signed off on that warrant a few hours after it was put in front of me. It was the very first time that it was presented to me, and I dealt with it very promptly and appropriately. I can also tell you that my testimony on this has been fully corroborated and not in any way contradicted by the testimony of the Deputy Minister of Public Safety and by the Director of CSIS, all of whom shared that when the matter was brought to me on May the 11th, and it was for the very first time that I dealt with it promptly and authorized them to go forward.
Other testimony, Minister, has raised concern over the fact that it was handed weeks prior, 6 weeks prior almost, to your Chief of Staff at the time. Do you know why that was not forwarded to you in the interim?
No, all I can say is that there are in all of our interactions with on warranted matters, there are discussions that may take place among officials, but when it was brought to my attention, and as soon as the Director of CSIS advised me that they had a warrant, I went to their regional office in Toronto. I was briefed on the warrant application, and I signed off on it. All of that took place on May the 11th, 2021, and it was dealt with in an entirely appropriate and very prompt way.
And I do appreciate your candor on your own role, but my question was about your Chief of Staff, who's not just any official. This is a warrant application that had gone to the highest levels of the security establishment, of CSIS, for example. The head of CSIS had signed off on it. Can you understand how to Canadians it is suspect that it would sit with your Chief of Staff, the highest employee close to you, for weeks before being passed on, before actually CSIS ended up flagging it with you?
And Bashi, I think that those are questions best put to people that might have been involved in those conversations. I was not, and I was not advised to it previously.
You oversaw them.
But if I may, there's a direct relationship under the CSIS Act of the Director of CSIS to me. And he's been very clear in his testimony that he was not concerned by any delay, neither in the days leading up to May 11th when I actually signed the warrant, or in the 2 years subsequently until this was reported in the Globe and Mail. He never mentioned that there was any concerns about delay. Again, I have no knowledge of conversations that the Director of CSIS may have had with other officials, either in my office. I only know when the matter was first brought to me, and I've testified truthfully and under oath that was brought to me on May the 11th, 2021, and that's the day I signed it.
And again, with great respect, Minister, I take your point on the testimony from the head of CSIS, but there have been many other officials with CSIS who have testified that they were indeed frustrated by those delays. This is an election year. Michael Chan is a well-known Liberal operative. In your office, the person directly reporting to you did not pass that on to you. Do you concede that that has an appearance that would appear nefarious to Canadians, and why haven't you tried and figured out why that wasn't passed on to you?
Well, one of the things you've said is actually incorrect. May of 2021 was not an election year. The next scheduled election was in October of 2023. On August the 15th, the Prime Minister called a snap election, but I'm not sure how, if any, officials could have anticipated that in May of the spring of that year. And as well, we're having a public inquiry into a number of elements. The bottom line is that there is always important work that takes place to make sure that the due diligence is exercised in every document and action undertaken at public safety, and particularly in the fulfillment of my responsibilities with the authorization of warrant applications going before a federal court judge. My expectation is that the officials will deal with that, and when the document is ready for my consideration, it'll be brought forward to me, and it's always been my expectation that would be dealt with appropriately and promptly in every case, as it was in this case.
So you do not believe anything, that any process was not followed? You endorse the actions of your Chief of Staff at the time?
No. To be really clear, the only thing I can testify to, and I have, as I say on a number of occasions, I'm actually going to be back before that committee next week, And what I'm able to share with the committee is when it was brought to my attention, and I'm the only one with legislative authority to sign off on those warrants, when it was brought to my attention by the director of CSIS, it was dealt with very promptly within hours.
And I appreciate your candor on that, but you're not answering the question of why your chief of staff was able to not forward it to you. Like, have you asked? Have you figured out? Are you satisfied with the answer?
Frankly, I don't have any information on that.
Shouldn't you?
And I think that well, I'm no longer the Minister of Public Safety, and in fact, when this information was first brought to the attention by an anonymous informant speaking to the Globe and Mail, I was no longer in public safety, and so never had any opportunity to inquire about how this came to be. All I can do, Vashi, is testify honestly, truthfully, and forthrightly about what I did and when I did it. And frankly, when it was first reported, it was mischaracterized in the press. I've attempted to clarify that. When the warrant was brought to me on May 11th, I did my job. I was briefed by CSIS director, and I read the document very thoroughly because it's a complex bit of legislation, and it is a legislative responsibility contained in the CSIS Act that I take very seriously. I've done it a number of times in the past, and in this particular case, like in all cases, I did my job. I did it promptly. I authorized it to go forward, and at no time the director of CSIS or the deputy minister, who are the two principal senior officials in government responsible for these warrant applications, at no time did they ever alert me to any concerns about any delay, either before I signed it or in the 2 years following.
Okay, I will leave it on that note. Minister, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
And thanks very much, Vashi. Have a good day.